A family rediscovered on a crisp autumn afternoon in Central Park. 5-year-old Lily tugged at her father's sleeve, her eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, look, that's my brother!" she exclaimed, pointing toward a boy sitting alone by a fountain. David Harper, a wealthy architect who had raised Lily alone since his wife Sarah passed away 3 years ago, froze. His heart skipped as he followed her gaze. Lily's words echoed in his mind. "He looks like me, Daddy, like you too." David crouched beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sweetheart, you don't have a brother," he said, gently, though his voice wavered. But when he looked at the boy, his breath caught. The child, no older than 6, sat on the fountain's edge, clutching a worn backpack. His clothes were threadbare, his sneakers tattered, but it was his hazel eyes identical to Lily's that stopped David cold. "Lily, stay here," David said, his voice steady but his mind racing. He approached the boy cautiously, Lily trailing behind despite his words. The boy looked up, wary, his grip tightening on the backpack. "Hi," David said softly, kneeling to the boy's level. "I'm David. This is my daughter, Lily. What's your name?" The boy hesitated, then whispered. Ethan, David repeated, offering a warm smile. "Do you live nearby?" Ethan's eyes dropped to the ground. "With my mom, in a small place on 48th Street. She's been sick, and we didn't have food today, so I came here." David's chest tightened. "Do you have a dad?" he asked, almost afraid of the answer. Ethan shook his head. "Mom says he left before I was born." The words hit David like a wave. 7 years ago, he'd had a brief relationship with a woman named Rachel Evans, a kind-hearted graphic designer who worked briefly at his firm. It ended abruptly when she left the company under unclear circumstances, a misunderstanding over a project, he recalled. She'd tried to reach out afterward, leaving voicemails he never returned, buried under the weight of his growing career and grief over Sarah's illness. Could Ethan be? David pulled a granola bar from Lily's backpack and handed it to Ethan. "Here, you must be hungry." Ethan took it cautiously, mumbling a quiet, "Thanks." Lily plopped onto the grass beside him, grinning. "I like your backpack," she said brightly. "Want to see my unicorn keychain?" Ethan's lips twitched into a shy smile. David watched them, his heart pounding. The resemblance was uncanny, the same hazel eyes, the same dimple on their left cheeks. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant, Claire. "I need you to dig into the records of a former employee, Rachel Evans, from about 7 years ago. Everything you can find." Claire didn't hesitate. "On it, Mr. Harper." David looked back at the children. Lily was now showing Ethan her sketchbook, chattering away. "Ethan," David said gently, "how about you come with us for a warm meal? Then I'll make sure you get home safely." Ethan nodded slowly, clutching his backpack tighter. At David's Upper East Side apartment, Ethan stepped hesitantly inside, eyes wide at the sleek marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. Lily grabbed his hand, pulling him toward her room. "Come see my glow-in-the-dark stars," she squealed. David watched them disappear down the hall, then retreated to his study. He unlocked a drawer and pulled out old employee files. Rachel's photo stared back at him, hazel eyes, warm smile. She'd been let go after a client dispute, one David had signed off on without much thought. He remembered her emails, her calls, all ignored in the chaos of his life. His phone buzzed. Claire's email contained Rachel's last known address, a rundown building in Queens. David's stomach churned as he pictured Ethan living there. He made a call to a local aid group, requesting an anonymous delivery of groceries, medicine, and essentials to Rachel's address. "No note, no sender," he instructed. "Just make sure it gets there." That evening, Lily and Ethan built a blanket fort in the living room, giggling as they crawled inside. David watched, a lump in his throat. Ethan's quiet grace, his cautious smiles, it was like seeing himself as a child, always watching, always waiting. He knew he couldn't walk away. The next morning, David drove Ethan and Lily to Queens. Ethan fidgeted in the back seat, clutching his backpack. When they arrived at the faded apartment building, David knocked on the door of Unit 3C. Rachel opened it, her face pale and tired but still striking. Her eyes widened when she saw Ethan, then narrowed at David. "Ethan!" She pulled her son into a hug, then glared at David. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk," David said, his voice soft but firm. "Lily saw Ethan in the park. She said he's her brother. I didn't believe it at first, but—" "Rachel, is he mine?" Her jaw tightened. "You don't get to waltz in now, David, not after you ignored me. I was pregnant, alone, and you didn't care." David's heart sank. "I didn't know, Rachel. I swear, I never saw your messages." She laughed bitterly. "You were too busy building your empire." "I raised him alone, David. We've managed." "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I want to help now. For Ethan, for you." Rachel's eyes softened slightly, but her guard remained. "I don't need your pity." "It's not pity," David said. "Let me take a DNA test, just to be sure, and let me help with what you need, rent, medical bills, anything." She hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, a test. But don't expect me to trust you." A week later, the results arrived. David stared at the envelope in his office. 99.99% probability of paternity. Ethan was his son. He called Rachel immediately, arranging for Ethan to visit again. When Ethan stepped into the apartment, Lily tackled him with a hug. "You're my brother for real?" She asked QUELED. But the news wasn't quiet for long. Headlines erupted. Architect's secret son revealed. Paparazzi swarmed. David's board called an emergency meeting, warning of reputational damage. "This is my family," David snapped. "If that's a problem, find a new CEO." At home, Ethan was quiet, adjusting slowly. David noticed his hesitation, his glances toward the door. One evening, he knelt beside him. "Ethan, want to make cookies with us? You and Lily can pick the shapes." Ethan's eyes lit up. They rolled dough, cut star-shaped cookies, and laughed as flour dusted the counter. For the first time, Ethan's smile was unguarded. David gifted him a blue scooter to match Lily's, and the two raced down the sidewalk, their laughter echoing. Rachel visited often, her wariness fading as she watched David with Ethan. One afternoon, she found a note tucked in Ethan's backpack, a job offer at a design firm, no strings attached. "You didn't have to do this," she told David. "You deserve more than just getting by." He replied. Months passed, and a rhythm formed. David and Rachel co-parented, their conversations growing warmer. One day, at a school event, a parent made a snide remark about Rachel's background. David stepped in, voice firm. "Rachel's the strongest person I know. She raised our son alone, and she's family." Rachel's eyes glistened. "Thank you," she whispered later, on a sunny afternoon. They picnicked in Central Park. Lily and Ethan chased fireflies as David and Rachel watched. Lily climbed into Rachel's lap, hugging her tightly. "I love you," she said softly. "Can you stay with us?" Rachel's breath caught. She looked at David, who smiled gently. "No pressure," he said. "But we'd love for you to be closer," Rachel nodded slowly. "I'm thinking about moving nearby. For the kids." That evening, Ethan and Lily presented a drawing, 4 stick figures under a rainbow, labeled "Our Family." David pulled out a small box, revealing a bracelet engraved with their names: David, Rachel, Ethan, Lily. "A promise," he said. "We're in this together." Rachel slipped it on, her eyes soft. "Together," she echoed. A year later, they lived in a cozy house outside the city. Rachel's bakery, Evelyn's Treats, named for her late mother, thrived. David worked less, cherishing school runs and bedtime stories. Ethan and Lily were inseparable, their laughter filling the house. At a backyard barbecue, surrounded by friends. David raised a glass. "To family," he said, his arm around Rachel. Ethan and Lily ran forward, holding a new drawing, their family under a bright sun. Rachel's hand found David's, and in that moment they knew love had rebuilt what time had broken, and they were home.